And welcome back to our newest feature of our webinar series, The Conversation Continues, where we answer even more of the questions that have come in with Professor Adam Galinsky. Adam, let's get started, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, so the first question came in from Pearl. She just says, there are biological differences between the sexes. It's clear. Can't you comment on that?
It's true. I've suggested that many gender differences are really power difference in the skies, but there are obviously differences between the sexes at a biological and hormonal level. So for example, two of the most well-known differences between the sexes are that men are bigger and stronger. They can lift more weight than women can. And two is that women are physically more flexible in their bodies than men. They can bend in ways that men can't do. But I think there are a couple things that are really important about thinking about sex differences. First of all, there's probably some jobs that men need to do that women can't do because of the strength issue. But then there's jobs that women can do because of their flexibility that men can't do. And if we think about one of the areas where this came up in the past was the military, right? But the military needs some people with brute force, but they also need people with flexibility. And then there are a lot of jobs in the military that don't actually require any relationship to those sex differences. So for example, they just deal with the ability to think and plan and implement strategy. And so once we start thinking about it, they realize, yeah, there are a few sex differences, there's no question about that. But many of them, A, don't matter in modern economies, and even those that do, there's a division of labor that can still be rewarded at both levels of the sexes.
Great, so this is a good follow-up question from Zena. Has the role of parenting been taken into consideration when it comes to the role of power, especially in different countries?
Absolutely. Well, let me just say two things about that. First of all, it is clear that women have some relationship to parenting that men don't have. They obviously gestate a fetus and deliver a new baby, and they also lactate and often breastfeed that baby. And those are things that men simply can't do biologically. Now, one of the things, and we start thinking about where do power differences come from, is that some of those activities that women engage in have been less valued in society, hence lowering the power that women have in society. So I think one thing that becomes very important is to value those things that women and men can do differently as having equal status, if you will. But I think there's another really important implication, which is that if we want to give women equal opportunities as men, and if we want women to have the same power as men, we have to take into consideration the fact that women are going to need longer maternal leave than men do. And we have to build that into our public policy, if you will, or organizational practices in order to ensure that women's ability meet the same opportunity as men.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about that. Rosemary asked a question on organizational culture, which I think really feeds into. Current efforts focus on changing organizational culture. How does organizational culture relate to that organization's power sharing?
Sure, I think it's a really great question. I think that organizational culture really matters a lot. So one of the things that really matters is when people at the top are committed to gender equality or committed to diversity, and that signal and that spreads throughout the whole culture, and I think that really makes a difference. Let me just tell you one really important finding. When people have looked at what really makes a difference in organizational practices and predicting greater equality of the sexes, or women moving up and getting promoted at a faster rate, at the rate that they deserve. Now, it turns out diversity training doesn't actually work that well. Lots of studies have looked at this, and when we do training on unconscious bias, I think it's important, but sometimes it can create a little bit of resistance and resentment in, let's say, white males who think that they're being singled out for this. And there's a sense of like that we may be losing something from this process. Well, what does work? What really works well is something I already mentioned earlier, which is when we have formalized, inclusive mentorship systems. That is not a mentorship system that's designed to benefit women, but a mentorship system that's designed to benefit everyone. That really levels the playing field when everyone has access to trust and to information and those opportunities. So that's one of those examples. Now, we talked a little bit about family leave practices, and organizations can play an important role in that process. But one of the things that's really important is to let people understand, and this is true of the research, that gains for women don't have to be losses for men. I saw that in the example when women have more power in society, their female soccer teams do better, but so do their male soccer teams. And when we handle this correctly, we expand the pie so that both men and women are better off.
Yes, absolutely. And one last question. Are there differences between the way genders use their powers? This is from Dennis.
So it's a great question. Is there a difference between the way that genders use their power? The answer to that question is yes and no. What do I mean by that? Well, currently women have less power in society. When they're put into a position of power, they still have a more narrow range of acceptable behavior than men in that same position. So that's going to change the way that they use their power. However, there's lots of research that shows that women have some of the same positive and negative effects of power. So that women show some of the same increases in the ability to see the big picture when they have power, or to act more assertively. But some of the negative side effects. So some of the research I've done and some of my colleagues have done, Joris Lammers at the University of Cologne, have shown that women in power have higher infidelity rates than women not in power, just as men in power have higher infidelity rates than men not in power. So there's something about power that's leading to this infidelity irrespective of the sexes, if you will. Similarly, I've shown in some of my research that women put in power show the same tendency to cut corners and cheat for self-benefit that men do. And so that we can see how putting people in a position of power, we still bring, there's still some difference at the societal level, but the being in that position of power has the same sort of increases or boosts for women. They may still be lower than men in power in that same position, but it goes up and essentially for both men and women.
That's great. So Adam, this has been really wonderful. Lots of great information. If you had a lot of information, but one key takeaway from today that you wish people would take away from this, what would that be?
The key takeaway that I would give you is this, which is that when I actually ask people around the world, when do you feel comfortable? When do you feel powerful? A lot of times it's when people say, I had a lot of knowledge or expertise, or I knew what I was doing, or I had strong allies. And so I guess I would say is that in order to maximize your outcomes in life is, get the knowledge and expertise you need and get the allies to back you up. And if you do that, you'll be as classy as San Diego.
I think that's a great last statement. Thank you so much for sending in your questions, and thank you for being with us today. Adam, was very fun.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Take care.